Nathan was 21 years old when he embarked on the most important mission of his life. He had just emerged from a tent where he sat with General George Washington. And Washington leaned over and said, "We have got to know the British plans." And Nathan said, "You can count on me, sir." And he took off his lieutenant's uniform and put on his civilian clothes. And in that change of costume, Nathan Hale stopped being a lieutenant in the Continental Army and became a spy. Now, in our culture today, spies are really cool. I mean, there's movies about spies, and James Bond is so awesome. But back in the colonial days, a spy was someone who was considered dishonorable. You see, spies lied and used deceit, and they snuck around. And spies typically were people who came from the lower levels of the moral strata. And when Nathan Hale decided to be a spy, he knew that he was going to risk his reputation. You see, Hale had a great reputation. He went to an Ivy League school, I think it was Yale, and then he became a school teacher. And when the Revolutionary War broke out, he left the classroom and joined the army. Well, Hale was able to slip through the British lines, and from sitting up on hills, he was able to take copious notes about positions and where the fortifications were. And what he would do is he would hide those notes on pieces of paper in his shoe. Well, one day he was questioned by some British officers, and his answers just didn't quite ring true, and they searched him. And somehow they decided to search his shoes. And when they took off his shoes and they found the papers that proved that he was a spy, Hale immediately told them his name, his rank, and his mission to be a spy. Well, immediately he was taken to the commander of the British forces, General Hale. Once again, Hale confessed his mission, and without trial, without even really any deliberation, Hale said that Hale would be executed the very next day. Well, that night in jail, Nathan Hale asked for a minister to come and talk to him, but he was denied that. He said, "Well, can I at least have a Bible?" And he was denied that. And he spent that night all alone. The next morning, they took him out, and he was going to be publicly hanged before the people and the British officers who were there. Now, the accounts of his hanging differ in the details. Some people say that he had an impassioned speech at the end. Some people say he just said one line. But what everyone agrees on is that Nathan Hale comported himself with nobility and dignity. He wasn't panicked. He wasn't crying. He asked at the very last, before he walked up there, a British officer who was escorting him, he asked for 2 pieces of paper so he could write a quick letter. And he wrote a letter to his mother and to his brother. And then he got up on the platform. They put the noose around his neck. And some people say that in his speech, he talked about how what the British were doing was wrong, and how they were hurting innocents, and how he was so glad that he was able to fight and die for his country. The famous line from Nathan Hale is, "I regret that I have but one life to give to my country." Now, some accounts say that he said something similar to that, but not quite as poetic. There was a very famous play at that time called Cato, where there was a line similar to that was very popular with American patriots. But what is important is not the specific words that Hale said. What is important is the message that he tried to share before he died. And whether it was the poetic or a little bit more wordy, he did say something to the effect of, "I regret that I only have one life to give for my country." Some lines say, "If I had 1,000 lives, I would give them all for my country." What would you give your life for? What's worth dying for today? I was talking to a friend yesterday, and we were talking about the men who left their families and went and fought for the Union, or left their families and went and fought for the American Revolution because they believed in the ideals of America. And you know what? Back during the 1770s and back during the 1860s, America had deep set problems, just like it does today. But one of the things that has always set America apart from other countries is the ideals that it has. The ideals of separation of church and state, the ideals of freedom and liberty, the ideals of equality. And you know, the crazy thing about an ideal is you never reach it. I have ideals for myself, how I should be a father, how I should be a husband or a Christian man. And you know what? I never reach those ideals, even on my best day. Those ideals are far away. But that doesn't mean that I condemn myself, and that doesn't mean that I let go of my ideals. You see, our job is to live for the ideal. You know what? Nathan Hale was 21 years old when he died. And I bet he wasn't perfect. I bet he had bad days. I bet he had character flaws. But he's remembered as a hero. Our country is not perfect. And there are things that have got to change. And our job is to change those little things. But while I'm a patriotic American and I love my country, my first loyalty is to Jesus. He is the ideal. There is no darkness in him. There is no shadow of hatred or of injustice or of inequality or of deceit in him. And he calls me to follow him. He says, Grant, follow me. I have given you one life. Will you live it for me? And he's calling you to do the same thing. You know, one of the blessings of 2020 with the chaos that we've lived through is that we all know that tomorrow is not promised. We all know that we might not have 50 more years to live. But part of the blessing of that understanding is that if you only have a couple more days to live, or a couple more months to live, or a couple more years to live, then you want to live it fully. Jesus gave everything for us. He was a young man when he was also hung for us. And while his last words weren't talking about how he would die for his country, his last words were full of hope and peace. He said, Father, forgive them. They don't know what they do. He said, it is finished, which means we have won. Jesus gave his life for me and for you. And then he asks us for our lives. You see, I truly believe we're in the last days. And I believe that we are in the judgment days now. But I don't believe that Jesus is looking down at us with a list of good and bad actions and attitudes and thoughts and words saying, is Grant good enough for me? I believe Jesus is standing there with his arms outstretched wide. And he's saying, am I good enough for you? You see, the hour of his judgment means it is time for us to judge God. And if you look around at the world and the news, you realize that so many people are judging God and saying, you are not worthy. You're not even real. I don't want to give my life to you. I'm not going to trust in you. I reject you. And they are judging him and pushing him away. And it is our job as Christians to first off, accept him. And then to share who he truly is with the world that believes lies about God. We've got one life. Who are you going to live it for? Yourself? Make some money? Do the things that just bring you pleasure and is that it? Or do you want to give your life to Jesus, who gave everything for you? God bless. If you feel like anyone needs to hear this, to be encouraged, please share it with them. You're going to do great things. God made you to do something special. And these are the times when great people are going to start stepping up and doing that special thing they were created for. And I believe with all my heart that if you're listening to this, that God is speaking to you right now saying, I'm going to do something great with you. But first, you have to judge me as worthy. You got to trust me, or otherwise you won't be able to step into that greatness. So I encourage you to look up, to remember that God's got this, and then to give him everything you've got. God bless.